I'll probably announce another closure now for Ashford in Kent at this rate. Neelam, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're really happy you could make it. You've got a perspective that you wanted to share around a number of the questions on pedagogy and assessment. The stage is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Ty. Really interesting about this lockdown scenario. We are in a position where we think we're ready to go live and schools are going to start, and then lo and behold, we'll be told that your certain area is going to be locked down, and therefore you can't continue your conventional practices that you've been geared up to do. So following this theme throughout the conference so far, I think we need to be in a situation where we are not reacting to a crisis, but rather be in a situation where we can now get ourselves in a position where the technology is part of our school development plan, as we've said over and over again, but at the same time be in a position where we have to try to make it work, if we can. So some of the questions that came to me from a more pedagogical aspect was, what are the better blended learning best practice approaches? Now, this is, again, a really interesting question. So depending on the key group, the year groups of your children, I would say the pedagogical practices change. So we had children from from reception all the way up to sixth form, and across the board some other schools. And we found that with the younger ones, whereas the theory suggests, if you're going in an online environment, you want to really pre-record your lessons and hand it over. With the younger ones, this whole thing about human touch is so key. So them connecting with us in a live environment, doing face-to-face video, watching us smile, us sort of create this sort of dramatic environment in the background is so important to them. It is all about open questioning, scaffolding, modeling, nurturing them in this learning environment. And so therefore just producing a pre-recorded presentation, sending it over to them and getting their parents, which again is a very highly stressful environment because parents are trying to work and have to coexist with the students at the same time. So from that perspective, we found the younger years, there is a blended learning approach. Not one style suits them best. It would be a little bit of live lessons, but at the same time have what you call a recorded sort of clip. I believe one of the speakers said, it's all about recall and repetition. And that's really quite key, again, with them, because we're working in an online environment, which is not necessarily as dynamic as when you're in a classroom. With the older ones, on the other hand, we found that, again, some of the younger ones, year 7, 8 to 9, they still need a little bit more scaffolding. They still need that sort of support as they're learning. But with the older ones, we found that just offering them flipped learning approaches has helped facilitate their learning, if they're conscientious, if they're more the independent learners, to take it faster and within their own space. So in some areas, they've actually managed to complete the curriculum and move forward and work with assessment. Whereas some of the students have preferred it. So their feedback to us is, we actually prefer this method and we'd like to meet you guys every other day, so you can deepen our understanding, because we're working at our own pace and it suits us, and we're getting prepared for what's to come when we move to colleges and university. So it's a really interesting space to be in. Now, take this entire approach back into school in September when we open the doors, and then you're teaching them in the live environment, and you're catering to students in an offline environment, and you've got students in a different country. That's when the pedagogy is really going to turn over its head. And then that's when I think you're really, you're going to have to be really innovative. Think out the box, be creative. Of course, you can't fix all the problems, but you've got a plan. You've got a plan for how you're going to teach your students in the classroom, give them your undivided attention, at the same time record yourself for your students in different parts of the world away from you, and cater to their needs. So from a pedagogical perspective, there's no one solution that fits all. However, I would really encourage you to think about this if you're in this position, so that you're not alienating one group over another.
Do you think some of the gains, some of the things that have been tried out by educators, are they going to stick, Neelam?
I think so. I really do think so. So we have found, for instance, our students are working really well in a Teams environment. and they've learned to adapt to opening up lesson plans that are being pre-recorded for them with assessment for them as well, for them, which has been set. So from a point of view where the teacher's not available in the classroom, or you're looking at supply teachers, with enough planning, we may be in a position where teachers are going to pre-record their lessons and hand it over to the students. And their role in that context, whoever comes in the classroom will be more of a facilitator than a teacher. So from that point of view, our students have gained those digital literacy skills, and to some degree, that type of independency that we want them to have, but perhaps was not as obvious in a classroom.
Do you think schools still have a problem, a challenge with what you've spoken about, the need to have a plan, the need to have a strategy?
Okay, so not all schools are going to be in the position where they're going to have the technology at fingertips. And for that, we have, national platforms where, we have the Oak Academy that is building more videos, or we've got the BBC's bite-sized pieces. But for those other schools that are on this journey, beginning the journey, halfway through it, want to accelerate faster, I've always believed in a plan. It's great to get lucky. However, when you integrated within a plan, when you're looking at your technical infrastructure, you're considering your school ecosystem, you're understanding how that will work in teaching and learning practices. You've got all that in place. You're thinking about the continuous professional development for your teachers, students, and parents. It's good to have a plan so that you're aware of the areas where there's gaps or there's weaknesses, or perhaps where you need to add more training in those areas.
Superb.